Thanks very much. I'm thrilled to be here. I feel like one of those people who's been working in his basement on a model train set and goes to a conference of model train collectors, and it's like, oh my goodness, there's other people thinking about these issues. So I'm really thrilled to be here. How does this work here? So I'm here to talk to you about a project I've been working on for several years called Construction for a Livable City. You know, I'm going to repeat a lot of the themes because, you know, it's interesting. The world over, you know, we run into a lot of the same issues. Any successful city that sort of builds and sort of reinvents itself and tries to find ways to thrive and succeed is by definition growing, therefore building, and therefore facing the bane of construction and its impacts on its neighbors. New York City has been, it's a historic city. I mean, it started out as a city 400 years ago as a port. It grew and thrived as a center of commerce, and it's really reinvented itself time and time again as a home for education, healthcare, technology, finance, the welcoming doorstep to the United States for millions upon millions of immigrants. And this notion of change, there's been definitely at least one constant, and that is construction. And this is a fundamental problem, as I said. It never changes, it's always there. And so we've got this concept of success, but all of these very negative externalities, the noise, the dust, the impact on everyday residents. And it's particularly true in New York City, where, if anyone's visited recently, I mean, it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere, a sign of positive change and a sign of its negative impacts. And that's an issue which my organization, the New York Building Congress, which is a large civic organization made up of the construction industry. It's unique because it's not a trade organization. We're not there to advocate for labor or owners or management or the public sector. We're there really to serve as a networking site for the industry to put forward ideas that can be used in the public space. Let me give you some examples of a walk I took near my office last week as I was preparing for this conference of some of these negative externalities. Here we're at 28th Street and 6th Avenue on the corner of near my office, and this is a small residential project which has far outstepped its footprint. This is a wasteland that's bottlenecked a two-lane road into one lane. Traffic is backed up for a block. Don't go down 28th Street. On the right side of the image is a narrow, dark, poorly lit pathway that tourists, pedestrians, and workers need to navigate every single day. I don't think I really need to add to this. This seems designed intentionally to confuse the pedestrian rather than inform and direct him or her. It's a travesty, and I think something that you walk away from confused and upset, if not lost. Also near my office, this wood blocking, in addition to being attractive, a potential nuisance. You're looking at something that has to meet very rigid engineering standards for safety. And all joking aside, to me this looks like a danger in addition to an unattractive piece of the landscape of architecture. Another image that's replicated across the city is the delivery truck. When steel or concrete arrives to the construction site, the entire street is either blocked off, the street and sidewalk, pedestrian traffic is choked, car traffic is choked. Another impediment that is not mitigated often enough. Here, this is a picture further south in Soho. I know there was a representative of the Water and Sewer Department. This is a project, New York City's Water and Sewer Department, doing a critical job replacing a 100-year-old water main. Small businesses line this street. This is typically a 4-lane with 2 parking lanes and two travel lanes, which has been shrunken down to 1. It's an open pit. Very little done to improve the landscape. Virtually nothing done to aid the businesses. It's no wonder we have an image problem. This is a fact of our existence and something we as an industry and we as a society have tolerated. There's any number of factors. We were having a very interesting conversation. We've been having this really interesting conversation about design and the image, but there was an interesting question. It extends far beyond simply the visual aspects. We're dirty. We take too much space. We don't consider our neighbors in terms of deliveries and work hours. We're noisy, and it's just this attack on all of our senses. And I speak as a representative of the building industry, and I believe very deeply in what we do. At the same time, I think we as an industry really need to recognize that this has impacts on us as well as the general public, and that's what I want to talk about today. This was supposed to sort of be a tricky slide, but we're in a PDF. Everything was going to kind of move around. But there are real social and economic costs. Nothing I've tried to quantify, but I think we can quantify. In New York City, any large project needs to go through a rigorous public process, a public approvals process, which could take anywhere from 7 months to years, where your project is reviewed, considered. There's a public review, a very political deal-making process where you're adding costs to the project. The simple duration of the project adds cost. The public becomes more and more resentful of construction as they face more and more building. So you have this sort of self-reinforcing loop of public resistance, slowing projects, creating costs, and just repeating itself and repeating itself. Development is slowed, and the best outcomes aren't achieved. So we came up with an idea. As an industry, I don't think we were unaware of what was going on. We just didn't know how to deal with it. So several years ago, our leadership, really made up of the city's largest owners, families who have been in the business for 100 years, designers, architects, engineers, really the entire industry, we realized that we needed to be cleaner, better organized, and a better neighbor. So we hired a designer, an architect, to go out on the street and visit construction sites under this banner of Construction for a Livable City and tell us what we could do to become a better neighbor. And he produced a report. I brought, I think, 5 copies up if anyone wants one, which reported on all the ways that we fail and a lot of ways that we as an industry have made innovations and improvements on a case-by-case basis. We got a lot of buy-in from our members. This is just a list. Some of the names you probably recognize because some of them are international firms. The crux of Construction for a Livable City is very simple. It's a checklist of 26 quality construction site management practices, which I won't go into excruciating detail, but the premise is simple. We offer you, the owner or the contractor, a piece of paper and ask you to adopt this list of 26 practices, which we divide into 4 very clear, easy to understand categories: the operations of your site, the environmental impact of your site, the outward physical appearance of your site, and your ability to inform and work with your community. And here's just a picture. Please don't read this, but it's very simple. The operations, you look at the construction fence or the work shed, and it's your objective to make sure that those wooden blocks, if at all possible, are threaded instead of using pieces of wood, that your plywood boards, in New York City we use exclusively plywood, no other material, and it's painted. that they're freshly painted, that there's no way that a passerby or pedestrian is going to get their jacket or their clothes caught, that during the winter that runoff is directed to a catch basin or caught beforehand. Environmental impact really addresses mitigating noise and air quality impacts. But the premise is very simple. You're supposed to do all these things anyway, and what we ask is for the owner or contractor to go above and beyond the minimum requirements required by law or the owner. And this is a subjective idea, but it's inspired a lot of interesting innovations. At the Museum of Natural History, which participated in construction for a livable city some years ago, they, as we've seen before, wrapped their entire site in this really attractive, evocative vinyl wrap. And so instead of the plywood, you see this vinyl wrap of, inspiring designs which you'll find inside the museum. And what I felt really for one of the first times, instead of being a facade that pushes the pedestrian away, it actually drew them in, and that was the intention. So this was a really, simple, common sense solution to the image and design equation. I would almost eat off of this street. This is another one of our member organizations, and one of their commitments to the community was to ensure that dust and materials from the site was regularly cleaned up. So their commitment was to run a street sweeper across the street twice a day, and in fact they do it and continue to do it. Another member, I think, used a really brilliant example. On their shelf with their health and safety regulations, any contractor has to use a checklist to make sure that they're meeting all their occupational health and safety regulations, as well as other requirements that the owner imposes. Well, they decided to make the same commitment to the checklist. And here they go out. They went out weekly, made sure that the construction for a livable city image was posted on the fence so that people understood that there was a visible representation that this site was doing something different. Pedestrian pathways were cleared and attractive. Street trees were protected. I mean, it's not elaborate, but as you can see, this is already a commitment that you don't necessarily expect. Traffic is managed. And this is one of my favorite pictures, actually, because this is a project in Brooklyn, which is sandwiched between Flatbush and Atlantic Avenues, which are two of the busiest thoroughfares in the city. And they made a commitment to the community to monitor air quality. And I'm sure there was some diminution of air quality caused by this project, but no matter what, it would have had to have been negligible. So they placed these air quality monitors around the site, and any time the air quality monitor went off, they would have to stop their site, their construction work at no small expense, figure out what was causing the increase the decrease in air quality, fix it, and then start up again. Which, to my mind, it's almost like a semiotic gesture to the community. You have this machine that does, in fact, very little, except show them that you're committed to making sure that their air is clean. And so whether or not their air is actually any cleaner is less of an important fact than the fact that you have the machine there. And here's something that actually does make a big difference. Here's a fence that is sealed. Every one of those seams has a sealant in the middle. You have this canted baffling on the top, and anyone who lives in the enormous residential project across the street has realized the difference. At the time of this picture, there had been no noise complaints from the housing project. So a really simple, easy to effectuate innovation has improved the quality of life of the neighborhood. New York University, another participant, has a website. They have construction going on all over the city, and they've dedicated a website giving a two-week look ahead to their construction schedule. They're going to do the construction, but if you're a neighbor, If you're a med student in the studying the building next to the building going up, at least you know to be out of your house on Friday morning between the hours of 9 and 11, because that's when they're driving piles. And again, it's an important gesture because it helps neighbors plan, but it also shows that you care about what their lives are like. I place a large emphasis when I go out and I try and recruit participants in construction for a livable city on this community relations aspect, because I believe it is the thing that our industry does the worst. It's extraordinarily important at the same time, which I find ironic. And as much as design and the physical appearance of the site is important, I think this notion of having an open door, a telephone number, or a face that you can yell at or at least see is a crucial part of improving our relations with our neighbors. Here's another example of outreach. Another one of our members posted their construction schedule look ahead on their fence, so if you walk by, you'd be able to easily see it. Again, another slide that kind of got a little bollocksed up, but we have to convince people to buy into this program. And the construction industry is a bottom line business. You need to convince them that you're giving them something of value. And that's been my effort for the last 4 years. I'm trying to convince members, potential participants, that what we're creating with Construction for a Livable City is a single industry standard, this one easy to use checklist that is all they need to demonstrate that they're living up to a higher and better standard than the industry typically does. In effect, becoming this good housekeeping seal of approval. So if a passerby or a neighbor or an elected official who has control over the future of your project sees that you're using Construction for a Livable City, that image on the bottom of the screen, they recognize that you're going to do something different and better and be a good neighbor. And eventually it becomes a value add. There's an actual value, a dollar value to a contractor or owner who's either trying to get their project approved by government because it's saving them time during the public approvals process, or to a contractor who's trying to get business with an owner because they're going to get selected because the owner knows that they're going to save them a lot of headache during the construction process. And the way you take care of that is, and the way you sort of promote this is also critical. You create the buzz. This is a picture of a major industry event in New York City with some of the leaders of our industry getting Crystal Award, saying you guys have done very well. Everyone else in the audience should use Construction for a Livable City. So it's a sound loop, really creating that marketing to make this thing have the value that we want. I'd be lying to you if I said that this was a swimming success. I think we need to grasp and grapple with this as an industry as well. The fact is that I'm not just asking people to adopt a list of quality construction site management practices. I'm asking for a cultural shift. If the whole industry is going to do it, the whole industry is going to have to see and understand that we have a problem. And to date, they really haven't. So this is an issue that we're grappling with as an organization, as an industry. And it's not just us. For example, our Department of Buildings told us we can't hang our sign up. They didn't see the value of us encouraging our members. And the one tangible value that we were offering, we believe, was that logo, that poster that people could put on their construction fence, which the Department of Buildings said we couldn't do. So we've got to deal with that. There's industry disinterest. I've held any number of meetings and recruitment rallies to bring people into the program, and response has been somewhat tepid. And frankly, the public doesn't buy it either. As a member of the industry, going to a community group or a civic organization or a small business association, telling them that we're trying to police ourselves, well, they've been sold that one before. So getting them to believe in what we're doing is also very critical. These are all essential things, though. This is essential work, and I believe that we need to continue it. So we're trying to do this. We're trying to get our message out. I continue our meetings. We've sort of tried to take more bite-sized pieces. I've focused on individual recruitment of members. We just got an enormous participant who's building, I think, the third largest development in New York City. Last week, Brookfield Development, and they're rising right behind the future Moynihan Station. It's going to be a center of business and commerce. And I'll leave you with to push this forward, because when we walk away from this, it's not just the physical structures we build, but also the social structures that we build that's going to be our legacy. Thank you.